Note to self, EJ, if a cat really wants to stay under the bed and they don't want you to remove them from under the bed to eat a meal, don't try. They will scratch you in the face. Usually doesn't go well for you. This has been an eventful week for me between not having power all Monday, so we're recording this show late, and then getting almost clawed to death right before recording. Not a great start to week 3 for me, EJ. How are you?
Better than that, for sure. Make sure to keep that one clean. But I'm glad it didn't get you in the eye, because that's worse. So, it's kind of like being a Bears fan. There's silver linings here.
Are there silver linings to being a Bears fan?
I'm not really sure, but it's more just like getting scratched in the face by a cat.
We have a lot to go over today, and we are explicitly not going to talk about the Bears anymore because I don't think I can. But there's a lot of fan bases that essentially get ignored throughout the NFL season. And you guys know that above all, this show likes to have all 32 fan bases included throughout the season. We want you to know that you are seen. You are not wallowing in obscurity for 4 straight months. Saints fans, Cardinals fans, Panthers fans. There's a bunch of teams that unfortunately the media neglects their existence. And so today's episode is dedicated to all those fan bases. There's a bunch of games that have not really gotten talked about that much this week, especially relative to how much they probably should have been talked about. So if you're a wayward fan that is waiting for ESPN to talk about you and you know in the back of your head they never will, this show's for you. Without further ado, Neil, please roll the intro. Welcome to the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm Brett Coleman. That's the wonderful EJ Snyder. I am ready to have a wonderful show. And more importantly, I am ready to forget whatever the hell just happened last night in the Texans game, because Baker Mayfield is a magician and somehow unsackable when you absolutely need to sack him. So I'm going cast strength today, EJ. 116.78 proof to be exact. Woodinville bourbon cast strength to help me drown out all my problems. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm drinking straight water today because I have to go to a football game right after this. So I got to drive, but no, lots of fun games to talk about. Not necessarily for us being Bears and Texans fans, so we're not really going to concentrate on those too much. But again, shedding some light on games that we think are really worthy in performances that might be or actually are being overlooked by players on teams who, look, their seasons might not be tremendous as a team, but there are some really solid performances every week in, week out in the NFL that don't get talked about, and we're going to do some of that today.
I want to start the show today with the game that probably got talked about the least out of any of them, because a lot of people perceive that to have been a very low-stakes game, and that's Niners-Saints, right? Because most people think that the Saints are going to be a top 3 draft pick. In fact, right now, I think after 2 weeks, again, take it with a grain of salt, after 2 weeks, they're in line for the number 1 overall pick. Most people think that they're probably going to stay there most of the season, if not the entire season. Then you got the Niners, who are one of the forgotten teams in the NFC already because they took so many injuries starting in August that everybody's like, okay, well, they're just going to limp along to the finish line. So most people didn't watch this game, right? It was Spencer Rattler versus Mac Jones. And I got to say, EJ, even though I didn't watch it live, when I went back and I watched it later, which was 6 a.m. today, full disclosure, when I watched it later, I was like, damn, this was pretty entertaining. And the most entertaining part about it to me was Spencer Rattler. Like, I think the Saints might actually have something here. Again, he lost the game. The roster around him, the situation around him isn't that great. But if we're just talking about throw for throw, like who had some of the most impressive throws of the weekend, even though his team let him down, like I thought he played a great football game.
He is developing right in front of nobody's eyes, and that is because nobody is really watching. And they should be. He's not been spectacular, but he has been middle of the pack and solid and getting better. And that is really something for a 5th-round QB, because year after year we hear, look, if you don't pick a quarterback in the first round or the first few picks of the second round, you're really just picking a backup. There's no hope that they're ever going to be a functional starter. If you look at it statistically, it's basically like finding a needle in a haystack, and the Saints may have done it here with Rattler. Also, he would have had a much nicer day if his receiver had caught the ball. He hit him right here in the hands, in the end zone, and he just didn't catch it. It was a very catchable ball, and that would have turned his statistics to an even better level. But even without that, he was on time. He made some great escapes, which we've seen him do in college. His arm is good to pretty good. It's not great, but it's, I would say, average or above, and certainly NFL functional. And more so, he is using that arm strength in the way that he needs to move that offense. And nobody's paying attention right now, and everybody's just assuming he's going to get replaced. And I hope, for one, that he just keeps developing, because it's a lot more fun that way, both for Saints fans and for us who watch Saints games. And right now, yeah, they might have something in Spencer Rattler, and that is a gift in NFL terms.
Fred Warner, honestly, is the main reason the Niners even won that game, because even by Fred standards, he had a ridiculous Sunday. He took points off the board essentially by himself, forcing a fumble at the Niners' own 30-yard line that got rid of a potential field goal attempt. He had a PBU on 3rd and 1 late in the game when the Saints, again, it was a one-possession game. Saints had the ball late, 3rd and 1. Rattler made a fantastic throw, like put it high and away where only his guy could get it, but only his guy could get it only matters if he's not going against Fred Warner, who can just, like, all the way to the ground. He's going to contest the pass. He's not going to give you an easy one. And if you can't survive the ground and you can't survive contact against Fred, like, he is going to fight until the whistle blows to knock that ball loose. And he did. So, beyond just Fred doing Fred things against the run, he is still an elite pass defender. He is still an impact player. He forces turnovers. He gets extra possessions for his offense, who really did need it. Also, side note, credit to Mac Jones. I thought he played a good game. Not a great game, but a good game. There are still fairly critical flaws that I think makes him not really a starting quarterback in the league. Fuck it. I guess I'll go down the rabbit hole now. So I put out a tweet last week, EJ, when Purdy's injury was announced, that, people are going to see what Brock has been covering up for the last few years. And of course, they won the game, and Grant Cohn did Grant Cohn shit, and he quote tweeted, he's like, when are we going to find out what Brock's been covering up for? And I'm like, buddy, this Saints team has the worst pass rush in the league. They had, on true dropback passes, a 12.9% pressure rate. And yet Mac Jones still took 3 sacks, right? If we're talking about pressure to sack ratio, he was abysmal in that regard. Now, it helped that they were going against the Saints, so he had time to make the throws that were necessary, and he did make some really nice throws. But if we're talking about the value that Purdy brings and what I was referring to that he's been covering up for all these years, and Niners fans know this, they've had really subpar offensive line play. It was Trent and 4 other guys for a lot of Purdy's tenure there. And in all of Purdy's starts leading up to this season, they were bottom 8 as far as pressure rate allowed, but they were top 9, or rather Purdy was 9th best in terms of denying sack percentage, right? So I guess the best way to put that is they were bottom 8 in terms of pressure allowed, top 9 in terms of sack percentage on those pressures, right? Whereas Mac Jones, he had a sack conversion rate of 33%, 5th highest this week. They only had 9 pressures on the day total, and he took 3 sacks. Like, if you project that out to like a normal day of giving up pressure, especially with the offensive line play that Brock has had to deal with against a normal pass rush, that's a cadence of like 6 to 7 sacks in a game, because he's not going to get out of anything. And even if you compare it to the other side of things, like Rattler was getting out of pressure. The Niners had the 5th highest pressure rate on true dropbacks this week, but were 27th in knockdown percentage. So Rattler was under a lot of pressure, but he wasn't allowing himself to get hit. He got the ball out quickly. He was able to avoid some stuff in the backfield. And again, the Saints were dead last in pressure percentage, and he still took 3 sacks. So when I say Brock is covering up for weaknesses, that's the weakness I'm talking about. It's pass protection. The Niners offensive line, Ben Barch got hurt early, and then his backup came in and honestly played better than Ben Barch has played. So like they played well as a unit, but also they were going against literally the worst pass rush in the league. So we'll see what happens next week. If Purdy doesn't come back next week, if Mac gets heated up a little bit more, are we still going to see the same results? I would probably say no, but it worked. They got a win. This team is making it happen against all odds despite their injuries. So credit to them. A win is a win, but they do still desperately need Brock Purdy back.
Down the stretch, it's not going to work out with Mac Jones, but it did on this day. He was shaky in the first quarter, and I thought, oh boy, just like many folks who watch Mac Jones play, both in New England and in Jacksonville, oh, here we go again. And then a funny thing happened. He settled down in the second quarter, ended up 26 of 39, 279, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 113 rating. Again, didn't deal with pressure particularly well, but when he had the opportunity, threw the ball very nicely. Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings were tormenting the Saints, not with a ton of catches, but their average catch were 14 and almost 18 yards per catch. So when they did catch it, they did damage. And CMC versus Alvin Kamara, I just want to say to football fans everywhere, savor these. There's not very many of them left. And both of them played great ball in this one. CMC really powered the offense. 100 yards from scrimmage, 55 rushing, 52 receiving, and really was the sort of straw stirring the drink for San Francisco. Kamara had 120 from scrimmage, 99 rushing, and 21 receiving. That is a vintage Alvin Kamara performance, and we're just not going to get to see those two guys go head-to-head very often anymore. I know we usually say that about quarterback matchups, not running back matchups, but this is two all-time classics at the running back position going at it, and that was a lot of fun. In terms of that Saints pressure rate, I do want to shout out Carl Granderson because he was everywhere. He was responsible for most of that pressure. He had 2 sacks. One was a cleanup from a Brian Bresee pressure, but he had 3 tackles for loss and 3 more quarterback hits. So to me, he's kind of the defensive version of Spencer Rattler. Nobody's watching, but he was wrecking stuff. Nobody else was. He wasn't getting a lot of help from his teammates, but if there was a Saints pressure, it probably came from Granderson. So, and also there was a Jonas Sanker sighting on defense, which was kind of nice. He was second on the team with 8 total tackles, 5 of them solo. One of the guys we highlighted in the draft, UVA safety that the Saints picked up later in the draft. I think if he keeps getting more playing time, the Saints are going to find it pretty hard to take him off the field because he was easily pretty effective. And the other rookie on the other side, Upton Stout, he was a menace. He is not a complete player, but boy, is he fun. And he was tormenting New Orleans throughout most of the day. And that's really his role. He is undersized, but he is that agent of chaos who gets near the line and just messes with people because he is extremely feisty. And I know a lot of Niners fans were like, ooh, we might have something here. A lot of fun.
He had a rep. He was penalized for illegal contact. For me, it was just like, all right, let the kids play. But there was a deep crosser, and Rattler threw a great ball on it. Like if you're looking at Rattler's passing chart, everything intermediate and deep to the left, like he was on the money, other than I think like maybe 1 or 2 throws max where he just kind of left it a little bit too flat. But this was one of the throws where he was on the money, like it was perfectly placed. It was against man coverage on a deep cross, which like, if your guy wins across the DB's face, like that's, you just give up an explosive. There's nothing you could do about it. And he stayed on this. It was Brandon Cooks, actually, I think. He stayed on this receiver's hip the entire time, undercut in the end, got a PBU. And again, it got called back to penalty. But I was like, that's sticky. Like that's really impressive because that's a route that's not really designed to actually be able to be covered in man coverage. And he managed to do it. So again, Niners, the rookie class overall, early returns are good for this Niners rookie class. We talked a lot about, the defensive line. They really had to reset the line of scrimmage, and because it was such a weakness last year, they drafted 3 defensive linemen that are all really good run defenders, and how they had to be able to reset the line of scrimmage and kind of give themselves more third and longs to work with. They did that in this game. Average yards before contact per attempt for Kamara was 0.1. So they reset the line of scrimmage really well. The problem was, because it's Alvin Kamara, he then got 4.1 yards per carry after contact per attempt. So they still ended up with about 4.2 yards per carry, but almost all of it was after contact, which to me is a good sign for the future that this Niners D-line is going to be able to stop the run once people, other than Fred Warner, learn how to tackle.
Yeah, Micah Williams has had some really nice reps early in the season. He has a long arm that is tremendous. He's strong and he's got great length in the arm, and he basically just bench press tackle out to full lock on that arm, kept the other arm free, drop guys. We're seeing some good fundamental stuff. We knew that was there. The question with him was always, if you're going to take him that high, is he going to create any pass rush productivity? We'll see. Again, he has the tools to do that, but I'm with you. I like to see the base starting off with, hey, do the thing you do well first, and we'll start and go from there. If you're not doing that, then there's greater questions about what did we really do with this pick. But the basis of, hey, we need to establish an identity and not just get gashed on the regular. Yeah, we got to tackle a little bit better, but I'm with you. If you're contacting the running back within a yard of the line of scrimmage, you're doing pretty well in the run game.
So overall, takeaways here. Spencer Rattler is encouraging, and right now I think I might believe in his development more than I believe in some of the guys that are coming out in this year's rookie class, because they have been, for the most part, very underwhelming, other than probably Nussmeier. So maybe Rattler is the quarterback of the future here, because there's not a whole lot else to turn to. That's my main takeaway there. My other takeaway is the Niners are somehow going to survive the September from hell with all these injuries, right? Because they already got one win, which, yes, it was narrow, but they got one win. And their next two games are also winnable with the Cardinals and the Jags. So it's not impossible that they could actually be in the running to take the lead in the NFC West going into week 5 or week 6, whatever that is, when they go to SoFi and play the Rams October 2nd, which to me is like best case scenario if you take this many injuries early, if you're still potentially going to be leading the division by October. So the Niners are in this thing, somehow against all odds, they're probably going to stay in this thing, which of course brings us to their opponent for this weekend, the Arizona Cardinals. One quick note, then we'll get right back to the show. For those of you that don't know, I am 34, and I have done my time. Many a late night, especially in college. 1v1s on Rust, javelins and throwing knives only. Shit got wild at 3 a.m., sophomore year of college. And even though I am long since retired, because I suck at whatever Call of Duty is now, a lot of you still play, and a lot of you are still really damn good at it. Which, of course, makes it great that today's sponsor is just for you, 1v1 Me. On 1v1 Me, every single day, you can both watch and stake on whether it's Madden, NBA 2K, FC, or, of course, Call of Duty matches. All the matches are streamed live. There's also a live chat for you to follow along with. Every match has referees, and payouts are instant. And these are not just random online lobbies. These are all the best players in the game, whether it's pros, streamers, everybody in that tier. And over 100 million has already been paid out. So if you're a sports fan, or more importantly, a gamer, 1v1 Me is the place to be. Download the app today and use promo code BOOTLEG, and your first stake is risk-free. Again, that is promo code BOOTLEG on the 1v1 Me app, and your first stake is risk-free. Thank you to 1v1 Me for sponsoring today's show, and with that, let's get back to it. Who are doing their best to capitalize on their early season success and take the NFC West crown for themselves. Ugly game against the Panthers. Extremely ugly game, actually. They got spotted 10 points in the first 5 minutes by 2 horrifically bad turnovers by Bryce Young. They weren't entirely his fault, but you're the quarterback, hang on to the ball, kind of is your fault at the end of the day. So they got spotted 10 points early on a fumble recovery and then an interception, and they maintained a fairly commanding lead for most of the game, and then you got to the fourth quarter. Collapse maybe isn't the best word, but whatever is like one level under collapse, that's how I would describe it, because they didn't just win this game, they survived this game. They survived the Carolina Panthers. And honestly, coming out of it, if I was a Cardinals fan, even though I got the win, I would be more worried than anything else, because it didn't feel like a win by the end.
I wrote that in my notes as well. I said Cardinals did win this game, but they did it by surviving the fourth quarter, not by putting their foot on somebody's neck and saying, hey, yeah, we got gifted early points from some turnovers. Carolina dug themselves a really big hole early in this one and then spent the rest of the game trying to dig themselves out. They almost did Long story short, they're not good enough to do that yet. But the Cardinals, again, taking that gift and, like you said, maintained control through the middle part of this game. And you thought, aha, this is what I thought the Cardinals were going to be. And then we got to the fourth quarter and it got real testy there. Out of 27 total points, they only scored 2 offensive touchdowns. That would give me pause. Oddly enough, their top 3 receivers in this one were 2 tight ends and a running back. Not great when you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. on the roster. Good news for the Cardinals is Will Johnson looks like an absolute steal. Bad news for the Cardinals, Will Johnson can't stay healthy, which was the knock on him coming out in the draft. He might miss some time with a groin injury, but when he's been out there so far, he has been a revelation in terms of corner play for the Cardinals. And is Calais Campbell ever not going to be good? He's like 47 years old and he had 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, and 2 QB hits in this one. He's the Energizer Bunny. He'll never stop. But yeah, I too am worried about the Cardinals because this is the kind of game you have to put away in the NFL because you won't always get lucky enough to be playing the Panthers, who couldn't dig themselves out. They tried, but you will be playing higher quality opponents, especially in your division. And if you get an early gift like this one, you have to be able to keep the lead to the finish line. And the Cardinals did. They get credit for that, but it was not confidence inspiring.
And hell, Johnson wasn't even the only one that got dinged. Well, actually, Johnson got dinged twice in the same game. So he had one of those classic, like, fall on the ball, knock the wind out of you, and recovered from that. And then his groin tightened up later in the game. So he got dinged twice. Buddha got dinged and then came back in the game. Actually, basically their entire secondary got hurt because Max Melton also left the game due to a knee injury. He got carded. He was walking on the sideline later with a knee brace. Hopefully it's not too serious. We don't have any update on it yet, but that's usually not a good sign. Garrett Williams also left with a knee injury. So it's possible. I'm not saying this is the entire reason, but it's possible that the Cardinals' comeback was heavily fueled by them playing you and me out there at corner by the end of the fourth quarter. But that being said, I want to give Bryce credit for sticking with it. He had 65 dropbacks in this game. Like, that's just nuts. And he stuck with it, made some really nice throws, had some really good second reaction plays, especially down in the red zone. I really respected how Carolina buckled down and came back in this thing. Like, they forced a really, really dumb red zone pick from Kyler to give them a shot even in the first place. So in some ways, if I was a Cardinals fan, I would feel okay about it because I feel like the main reason they lost was the first 5 minutes of the game. And it's like, okay, if we just clean up our interior offensive line picking up blitzes, because the Cardinals dialed up 2 third down blitzes on back-to-back third downs that both resulted in turnovers because first the center blew a block and the second one, the right guard blew a block. And they didn't even blitz that often. Like, they blitzed 10 times the entire game. It's just 2 of them resulted in turnovers. So it's like, okay, if we clean up our blitz pickups in the first 5 minutes, we probably win that game because it derailed the entire script for the entire rest of the day. And they just had to scratch and claw and fight and all that kind of stuff, and they almost pulled it off. So if I'm a Panthers fan, I'm not like super distraught about that one, but also at the same time I recognize like there's only so many quote unquote like winnable games on the schedule, and you need to capitalize on them when you can, and they didn't. So that game right there might be the difference between them making a wild card push or finishing like 15th in the draft order, and that's also disappointing.
Yeah, if you're a Panthers fan and you look up at the end of the day and Bryce threw it 55 times, I don't think you want to read the rest of the box score. Now, with those 55 throws, I too thought he did some good things. And again, they were playing from behind early. That's not great. The end result is they're 27th in rushing yards per game after 2 weeks because neither of their games have gone to the way their game script would have liked to go. And they haven't been that effective rushing the ball when they've tried. So they've had to back off and just whip it all over the yard. Silver lining, Hunter Renfro's back. 2 TDs on 7 catches in this one. And it was also nice to see Jatavian Sanders play a significant role. He, tight ends typically take longer to develop than most other positions, but he had 7 catches for 54 yards in this one, and 3 of them were for first down. So he was a guy that Bryce is starting to target when you got to have it. You got to move the chains. And to see him do that over and over in a game was not something we got to see last year. Those are good things that you can build off of. But yeah, you want to win the games you've got a shot at. And like you said, some early miscues set you behind, and you're just not quite good enough yet to put the hammer down and overcome that. So, difficult, but I'm with you. This is not a, burn the boats type of game. This is we can clean some things up and compete. Look, we almost got them. And if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot so often, we'll get the next one.
Yeah. They also, unfortunately, their offensive line's been banged up to start the year. Carolina's, that is. Ike Ekwonu came back in this game after appendectomy. All things considered, again, you just had a significant surgery. Thought he played well, considering that. But Robert Hunt suffered a biceps injury. He left the field in a sling, and then Austin Corbett suffered what we think might be a season-ending knee injury as of the time we're recording this. Hopefully it's not. So protection isn't going to get better, right? And, this is an offensive line that, they only had 6 blitzes against them in the first half, and they allowed pressure on 5 of them because they just kept missing pickups. And now you got 2 guys that got hurt. It might make it even harder to do that. So this is a team that, the key to stopping Bryce is blitzing. I don't, at least so far this year, I don't think that's going to get any better. That's a rough sign. The defense is still trying to get it together, but at some point after 4 years of when are the Panthers defense going to get it together? At some point, it's just not. So there is legitimate cause for concern, but it's early. I just keep telling myself that it's early. We'll see. I want to hit one more Cardinals topic before we get off this game. Cardinals fans, I've seen a lot of discourse on Cardinals Twitter. It's actually a fairly significant amount of Cardinals fans on Twitter, believe it or not. And we're both relitigating, the Will Anderson versus Paris Johnson discourse, and also relitigating the Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Malik Neighbors discourse. And considering what Malik did this week, which of course we're going to get to that game as well, and then considering how Marvin has looked, not just as a rookie, but in the first 2 weeks this year, there's a lot of Cardinals fans that are like, oh God, did we screw this up, right? For me, after going back and looking at every single contested target that Marvin has had so far this year, he's only got 5 so far. He's caught 2 of them. And, the drumbeat consistently is okay, the thing that we drafted him to be is the guy that dominates on fades, like what they had DeAndre Hopkins for a couple of years. And they threw him a goal line fade early in the game, and it didn't work. So it's okay, then why did we do that? Why did we spend our pick on Marvin to win on goal line fades if A, we're only going to throw him 1, and B, it's not even successful? And specifically on that fade and the fades from last year, I've noticed the same pattern. Kyler's ball placement has been really bad on them. They can't get on the same page as far as depth and timing, but specifically on that goal line fade Sunday, we're recording this on Tuesday, so Sunday, the ball was flat, it was left inside, it was not left nearly high and outside enough to actually weaponize Marvin's frame. So it's what's the point of having a 6'4 receiver if you're not going to let him be 6'4? And at the same time, on Marvin's end, he is not running these routes as violently as he did at Ohio State. I felt his pace on that goal line fade was slow. I felt like he didn't really give you a little stick at the top. I'm NFL corners, they're just going to sit on it. You have to actually give them something to freeze on a little bit, or they're just going to read your hips and follow you to the ball, right? So you got to be a little bit more violent. You got to be a little bit more sudden. And just to make sure I was looking at it right, I then made myself a cut up of Devontae Adams' goal line fades. And then I went back and I watched his fades at Ohio State. And I'm like, that's where the aggression was. So where did that go, right? Why is he running this route lackadaisically as a pro when he ran it really aggressively as a college player? I don't know, right? And maybe I don't want to say he's frustrated with Kyler not placing the ball correctly, but I can't really think of any other reason why he would just kind of drag ass during the one route that he's supposed to be dominant in. But I think it's both a Kyler problem and a Marvin problem, and I don't really know how to fix that.
I think you know how to fix it and you don't want to bring it up. But I don't doubt it.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. Marvin doesn't seem like he wants to be running that route. And I know that sounds like a dumb and kind of pedantic thing to say, like, oh, it doesn't look like he wants it. It matters in the NFL. If you're playing, and you usually are, against highly motivated players, even on losing teams, they don't want to look bad. They don't want to end up on people's highlight reels. It's difficult every Sunday. And if you are not running it at the top of your abilities with aggression, with nuance, with setting it up earlier in the game, if you're just kind of running through it to be there, you're not going to complete nearly as many as you could. And even when you do that, some people aren't gifted with enough skills to pay it off. So you're lowering your chances and lowering your percentages, and that's both bad for, well, it's bad for both guys involved. It's not good for Kyler's stats. It's not good for Marvin Harris's stats. And it's really bad for the Cardinals. And fans are left sort of turning their hands up and saying, what did we do? Or is this the best thing to do? And they've got to figure out the best way to make it work. And that's the alchemy of NFL coaching, is trying to find a way through the woods where you don't run yourself into a bunch of trees.
You mind if I pull off on a different road real quick here, because
No,
I know this wasn't on the agenda for today, but I also know that you've watched this as well, so you could probably speak to it. This lack of connection between Marvin and Kyler in some ways reminds me of what's going on in Jacksonville right now with BTJ and Trevor.
Oh, I know where this road is going. Right. Can we stop the car? I want to get out.
Same neighborhood, different house though, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like Marvin and Kyler can't get on the same page as far as like winning on literally any back shoulder fade ever. Whereas it feels like BTJ and Trevor, somewhere there, the trust between them has evaporated over the course of a month. And there's a lot of Jacksonville fans that have pointed out that rib shot he took in the preseason that has made him hesitant when he's attacking balls over the middle, or rather not attacking balls over the middle. And that game against the Bengals was brutal. There's no bones about it. It was bad. Like he shied away from contact no fewer than 3 times. I don't want to say disinterested. That's not the right word.
It's not that.
He was highly aware of the fact that his quarterback, A, is not that accurate, and B, does not necessarily have his best interest at heart in terms of where he puts the ball over the middle. And Tom Brady has talked about this many, many times over the years. So has Peyton. Although Peyton, I don't know if he really showed that much care for Austin Collie himself, but he's talked about it. Where if you have a guy running over the middle, it's your job as the quarterback to protect him. It's not the defense's job to protect him. It's your job as the quarterback to protect him. And Trevor Lawrence, because he's not an accurate passer yet for whatever reason, there's a whole discussion we can have on that. When he throws balls over the middle, he's not necessarily putting them in a spot that's going to protect his receiver from contact. He's not going to leave the ball either on their chest or slightly behind so they can turn away from that safety that's trying to take their head off. In the preseason, he left it high and inside, and BTJ took a shoulder to the ribs at full speed, and I feel like that affected BTJ. Mm-hmm. I really do. And he remembered that. He remembered last season as well, where Trevor was hanging guys out to dry. And I don't think when he gets a target in between the numbers, he trusts that Trevor's putting it in a spot that is going to keep him safe and healthy. And that's another thing I don't really know how to fix, because that is a psychology issue. It's a trust issue between quarterback and receiver. And the only thing I think Trevor can do to make BTJ trust him is to not leave him hanging out to dry. And I don't know if Trevor's accurate enough to do that. So maybe we see BTJ's route tree evolve to where he is just running stuff outside that's quote unquote safer until that trust can be built, and everybody else is doing the dirty work, rather the dangerous dirty work over the middle for this offense, because he just doesn't seem comfortable doing it.
Well, when you say comfortable, I think comfort comes in many forms. And you said psychological, and that's one thing for sure. But I think it's based in physiological. Uh, Having injured my ribs on both sides many times, ribs are incredibly painful. They don't heal quickly. And everything you do aggravates them. So every time you bend over, every time you sneeze, every time you laugh, every time you twist to get your seatbelt, you re-irritate that stuff. And it takes a long time to heal. So I'm not particularly sure he's fully healed yet, right? He took a bad shot and he's probably holding some of that injury. There's probably still soreness in that area. And look, everybody in the NFL is sore, but okay, you hold your hand up and I'll hit your ribs with the baseball bat. Right? How many times am I going to do that before you start pulling your elbow down and go, no, I don't want that anymore, right? So when it's still hurting, your body will do that, right? It's very difficult to just mind over matter it and say, I don't care. I'll throw my ribs out there. I don't care if they get cracked again. Like, that's not the way that works. And we saw it multiple times, as you said, on Sunday. He pulled away from contact. He short arm balls. He's still not comfortable physically doing what he needs to do over the middle, and it's probably because he's still holding some of that injury. They do not heal quickly. The other one is, hey, if I tell you I'm still hurting, make sure you leave that ball on my back shoulder, and your quarterback leads you into contact again, yeah, there's a little piece of you that goes, all right, business decision. And the business is I'm going to save myself, because if I don't do that, I'm not going to be on the field anyways for this team or any other. And it figures in. Now, the way to fix that isn't particularly pretty. He should probably sit until he's a little bit more healthy, until he feels good about being able to take contact on his ribs again, because the fact is with Trevor, he is going to take contact. I'm with you. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is suddenly going to morph into a very accurate middle of the field thrower. Now, Trevor's got a nice arm, and accuracy comes and goes. He has it sometimes. He doesn't have it other times. And that is going to leave his receivers susceptible to that contact. And if they're not ready to take that contact, or, and this is the part where everybody's trying to get into his head, just don't want to, right? I think people underrate the physical toll that the NFL takes on you. Like, not a lot of people talk about it because it'd sound like whining. You would be complaining every week about something, and that's every player. Nobody feels healthy even a couple of weeks into the season. And it's real easy to say, hey, man, I think you should just put your hand on the table and let me hit it with a hammer, until it's your hand on the table, and then you don't want to do it. And, a lot of guys have to just overcome that. We see that multiple ways in the NFL, but until BTJ can get back to that point, this isn't going to work, because Trevor's not going to magically get more accurate, and BTJ is not magically going to get more comfortable taking very painful rib shots from guys who are trying to knock him out of the game. Let's make no bones about it.
And I guess we should, on the other side of that game, just briefly mention, oh, by the way, Joe Burrow's out 3 months. That's kind of a big deal. Backup quarterbacks matter. The average starting quarterback per team per year is like 2.5. So this Sunday we're getting it's week 3 already, and we're getting a Carson Wentz versus Jake Browning game. It's a brutal sport, man. Like,
yes, it is.
Everybody gets hurt all the time. Doesn't matter what position you play. I don't want to put like the injury prone label on Burrow, because his injuries have been all kind of freak accidents. Like, they're not like typical injuries. They just happen to happen to the same guy over and over and over again. And I don't want to turn this into like a soliloquy about roster building and my disagreement with how they've done it. That's well documented at this point. The point I want to make with it is just, it sucks. It sucks. The NFL is better when Joe Burrow's on the field, and he's not going to be on the field till December at the earliest. And that might have ruined the Bengals season. The best they can probably hope for at the earliest time frame he comes back is like 7-7. And that's best case scenario. So it sucks. Everybody hates when you get halfway through September and you already feel like your season's done. Just ask Bears fans. And, that happened to the Bengals this week, and that's awful.
It's not great when Joe Burrow's not on the field for the Bengals, certainly, but also for the NFL product. It's more exciting when he is there. And look, he doesn't want this either. He's having surgery on his foot. Now, nobody wants to have surgery on your foot. It's not that much fun, and it hurts a lot, and the rehab's very difficult. So it's just a bad situation all the way around, but I feel like the Bengals pretty much bought this with their approach, and we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but this isn't like, hey, we did everything we could on the offensive line. We've invested so heavily and this still happened. Freak accident. No, that's not the case. It's been underfunded and underappreciated on your ball club for a while. You have tried, right? But it reminds me of that sort of Bart Simpson gif with dumping the cake in the trash, right? Oh, you tried. Nice. It wasn't enough. And Burrow has paid the price, and he paid it again. And there isn't an endless supply of Joe Burrow's will to play football behind a line that's not going to protect him. We just talked about it with BTJ. I'm not questioning Joe Burrow's toughness at all after everything he's endured in Cincinnati. But at some point you go, I had a lot of money in my pocket. I'd like to walk as a 60-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this. If you're not going to protect me, I'm not going to stand up there and get hit for you anymore. And Andrew Luck did it with Colts, and I've made that comparison several times in the past. More people are making it this week again because the parallels are there. And Burrow's actually been hit more than Luck, which is nuts. And at some point, he might say the same thing. And I know people will say, no, he'll never do it. He might. Like, it's physically very rugged, and when you are fearing for your long-term health, you might say, hey, like, it doesn't balance out anymore. We've seen a lot of guys do that with concussions and many other things, and just say, hey, this doesn't work for me anymore. And the Bengals could, I know they don't think that's going to happen, but they could find themselves there before too long without a radical change in approach. And it's kind of like the Trevor thing. I don't see the Bengals radically changing their approach for anybody. That's been illustrated in the way they deal with contracts, in the way they deal with signing free agents, in the way they deal with a great many things. They seem pretty entrenched by our way or the highway, and it might be the highway at some point for their star quarterback, and that would be a major loss for everyone, but most certainly them.
Well, speaking of the Indianapolis quarterback carousel, they might have finally got off, EJ. Next game on the docket, Indiana Jones lead the 2-0 Colts that are all of a sudden in the driver's seat for the division. With the Texans going down 0-2, Jacksonville being whatever Jacksonville is, and the Titans probably weren't going to win the division this year anyway. Even though I do like Cam Ward, I'm not going to talk about Cam Ward today, but damn, he's good. So maybe 2027, 2028 Titans, we'll talk about them more as division contenders. But right now, Colts are in the driver's seat. Before we really dive into this game, I want to note, by the way, some of you notice the shirts we're wearing. And I want to make it official. We are, once again, back with Underdog Fantasy. We have a lot of stuff that we're working on for this season. Some fairly major contests / promotions. And you're going to see those in due time over the next few weeks. I do want to note, though, promo code BOOTLEG, still active. We still have a whole bunch of promotions that are live week to week. But I wanted to at least announce that, yes, this is once again an Underdog Fantasy show. We are so happy to continue our relationship with them. We've worked with them for years. They're great people. Dan, Berm, Zach, Rudman, the whole crew. We love them, and we couldn't imagine going through this season without them at this point. So thank you once again to Underdog for hopping back on this ship, and also for our audience for supporting Underdog over the years.
With that said, we're very happy to have him back on board. It's feels like old home week, and that's a good thing. Broncos versus Colts is the Horse Bowl, a.k.a. the Horse Bowl, but I want to talk about Daniel Jones at the top. We mentioned him. We've certainly mentioned him a lot on this show, and I think let's just clear the table and get right to it. He's looked very solid this year. He is easily playing well enough to win. But my question as I sort of go back over the first 2 weeks, or went back over the first 2 weeks, is, has he been reborn under Shane Steichen, or is this the same old Daniel Jones with a little more help around him? And the real answer is it's a little bit of both. Through 2 weeks, Daniel Jones is second in pass yards. These stats were pulled before Monday night, so it might be different now, but he was second in pass yards. He was sixth in passer rating. He was sixth in raw completion percentage, 71.4%, but we know that stat kind of lies. So if we go to adjusted completion percentage, he drops to a much more familiar 23rd. He's only thrown for 2 TDs, but he has yet to throw a pick, which is very good in the Daniel Jones book. He's tied for 13th in average depth of target, middle of the pack, 15th in big time throw percentage, and 17th in time to throw. So he's playing good, solid, middle of the road football, and the Colts run game, third in the NFL with 161 yards per game, and the defense, which is number one in turnover differential, fifth least yards per game, is backing him up exquisitely well, and that's a winning combo for Indy. So just freeing themselves from the anchor of NFL worst quarterback play has vaulted them right back into the middle of the mix, which might be good enough to win their division. So credit to Daniel Jones, credit for, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard for saying, hey, we think this can work, and then making it work with the rest of that roster that we've been very complimentary of for a long time, adding Lou Anarumo in to really change up the defense, which had become predictable. And right now, mix and stir, the Colts are in it.
So far, 25% of all offensive drives against this Colts defense have ended in turnovers. 4 out of 16. Which, the fact that they only have 8 drives per game against them is wild, and that's really more of an offensive stat than anything else.
Yep.
But the fact that they've gotten 4 turnovers on 16 drives in 2 games is nuts. So Lou is cooking. We talked a little bit about the Miami Colts game, Miami versus Indy game in week 1, and how Lou relentlessly was attacking their lack of using running backs in protection, which has been an issue with Mike McDaniel's offense for a couple of years now. Got 2 sacks early on Tua doing that, and then somehow baited them into putting, I think it was Devon Achane against DeForest Buckner in protection. So he's very good still at attacking protection schemes. Which, considering as far as their defensive line goes, non-blitzes, they're 32nd in pressure rate, while being 11th in blitz rate. So really they are only getting pressure when they're blitzing, but they've been effective in doing that when they blitz. Hence, them forcing turnovers and getting big plays. Also, they've played clean defensively, only 1 defensive penalty in 2 games. I think the Giants got 4 in 5 minutes somehow. So that's an awesome stat. It shows how disciplined they've been. And then offensively, which their offense has done a phenomenal job at protecting their defense and keeping them as fresh as possible. They have been ridiculously efficient, historically efficient through 2 games. They're not the highest flying offense. They're not putting up the most points that we've ever seen in a 2-week stretch, like say the Saints last year. But as far as just taking the air out of the ball, not letting the other team on the field, and really just being a boa constrictor and continuously putting more and more and more pressure on the opposing team, because every time their offense goes on the field, they have to answer points. A scoring drive percentage of, I think total is 80% or something like that at this point. They scored on their first 10 drives of the season. I don't care what offense you're going against, other than peak Lamar or Josh. You're not going to go against a team that can answer 10 straight scoring drives. So I think their offense is their best component of their defense, as weird as that is to say, just because of the hyper efficient run game, how good they are on 3rd and 4th down. This team almost feels like a better version, other than quarterback play, obviously, but the roster and the philosophy feels like a better version of what the Chiefs were doing last year, which is just controlling the game and sucking the life out of you by holding onto the ball.
And using all their weapons for the first time. My highest praise for the Colts this year is they've trashed all our jokes. We can't just say that Alec Pierce is running cardio routes anymore. He's actually catching the football. You look up Michael Pittman. Oh, he doesn't ever score touchdowns. He just makes all those, useless yard catches. No, now he's making useful yard catches, first downs. I think the touchdowns will come because, again, his usage focus in their offense is higher. Jonathan Taylor's still doing Jonathan Taylor things. Every time you turn around, they're hitting you with a different weapon. They've had all these weapons. They've collected them, but they've never been able to sort of use them consistently. And when you talk about scoring 10 on 10 drives in a row, that is the definition of consistency. So no longer a punchline in Indianapolis. This is feels like a sustainable way to win games. we talk about synergistic football. We talked about it all summer long, one side supporting the other, or, offensive line supporting the skill position, pass rush supporting the secondary. There's all kinds of interconnectedness in a football team. And the Colts are firing pretty much on all cylinders right now, and we've not seen that for some time. So it's a little unsettling, but it's also pretty darn awesome.
The thing that honestly makes me believe it the most is who they did it against, right? In Denver. Because it's one thing, okay, if you're doing it against Miami's defense is terrible. Okay, yeah, they'll score on all 7 drives against Miami. But against Denver, who's at least going into the year, we thought was going to be a top 3 defense in the NFL, both personnel wise. It's their coordinator, their defensive staff is great, their personnel is great. They have an unreal secondary. We were looking at them coming into the year like, if you could score on Denver, you can score at anybody. And that Broncos secondary played man coverage on 8 of the Colts' 10 passing third downs, and they converted on 6 of them. Like, Daniel Jones converted on 6 of them. I thought Steichen was in his bag as far as play calling, because he knew that if they just got to like 3rd and 6 or under, which they did a lot because the run game was doing well. You saw a lot of 3rd and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If they got to 3rd and 6 or under, they knew man coverage was coming. And the calls that Steichen pulled out, the designs that he pulled out to get receivers just leverage opportunities against the suffocating Broncos secondary, where it's like, if we can just get it to where it's ball here, receiver here, DB here, and we trust our quarterback to put the ball where it needs to be, where the receiver can box out the DB, and we're just playing with timing and leverage and just converting and moving the chains over and over again. If we can just dial these opportunities up, we trust Daniel to put the ball where it needs to be. And by God, he fucking did it. 6 out of 8 converting, passing against this Broncos secondary playing man coverage. That's crazy. Like, I don't know if anybody did that last year. So yes, overall Daniel Jones's passing profile is like not amazing. Situationally, like, this is the best football he's ever played. Like, we saw it with the Giants, like, he would have some big days, but like situationally he was awful. Like, turning the ball over, taking bad sacks, missing throws that were key on 3rd down. Like, he was so bad situationally. And then you throw him with Shane Steichen for like 4 months, and look what happened. Like, he's not just better between the years, he's better as a thrower. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how much better he looks. And then, you got Tyler Warren looking like a top 5 tight end in the sport already as a rookie. He's going to put up like Brock Bowers numbers as a rookie, because he's like far and away, I think, their most effective weapon per target right now. You mentioned JT's doing JT things. The offensive line, like, shout out to the offensive line. Like, half the reason this team is so good offensively is because the offensive line just beats the hell out of you. This is a good team, man. It's a good team.
Yeah, a lot of times we've talked about the Colts, and it's felt like fool's gold for one reason or another. There was, good units on the team. There were good results. There were good days, to your point, but it never felt sort of sustainable or whole. It was always like, well, if everything falls the right way, they might be able to beat them. Now it's like, hey, these 2 units could have pretty bad days, and I think the rest of them would still carry the day for the Colts, and that's rare. On the Broncos side, again, they beat the Broncos. This is, I understand, beating the Dolphins, but Nix needed to play a lot better than he did in week 1, and he did. He was 22 of 30 for 206, 3 touchdowns, a 111 rating. He, in his own right, was much more efficient than he was in week 1. And I have to needle you for just a second.
What's that?
Through 2 weeks, Troy Franklin has twice as many yards as any other Broncos wide receiver, 133 to Cortland Sutton's 67. So caught 8 of 9 targets this week. Honestly, what we thought we were going to see because of the existing relationship between Troy Franklin and Bo Nix, which is well chronicled. We thought we were going to see that pop off screen last year. It didn't. This year, you could see it. They're playing backyard ball. Like, Troy Franklin got hung up, scramble drill. He looked at Bo. Bo gave him the look. He took off deep. Bo just floated it to him. Like, they've been doing that forever. It's paying off nicely for Denver. J.K. Dobbins had I don't want to say a bounce back game, but like a really solid game, 5.4 yards per carry and a touchdown. This is a tight game all the way through. It came down to field goals, and those are typically the kind of games that the Colts have lost. But they hung on. They won this one. They're playing very solid football, and they get the W.
That reminds me, because you mentioned, came down to field goals. As great a game as Steichen had overall, he almost did lose them in the end. The game, right? Essentially playing for a 60-yard field goal with his play calling at the end was wild. Like absolutely wild. I don't know why he did that. I don't know why he wasn't more aggressive at the end. Like just trying to not make it 60 yards would have been nice. They got bailed out by a penalty, which then made it possible. But he got away with one there. And, he did essentially not the same thing, but essentially the same thing that Sean Payton did in week 1, where he made like a really, really bad decision late in the game and they still won anyway. And you kind of saw it in his face after. He was like, oof. Okay, not going to do that again.
Yeah.
We kind of escaped there. I did have a Bo Nix note for you, and it's positive, by the way. I know people always like tense up when I'm like, "Oh, I got to talk about Bo Nix." Well, how about this? I'll do a sandwich. Bo Nix played well overall. 5.7 was his average depth of target.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Like, they have to throw the ball down the field more. Like, they really do. And I know that's the offense he came out of Oregon. There's a lot of screens, a lot of RPOs. They were top 3 in screen rate this week. They were top 3 in RPO rate this week. They were top 10 in play action rate this week. Like, there's a lot of manufactured stuff here. And so it's like, okay, that's what he came out of college. Like, Sean's trying to keep him comfortable. Like, he's trying to not put too much on him as a young quarterback. I'm sorry, you have to. He played 6 years in college. Like he was the most experienced college quarterback, literally of all time. He's got a full season under his belt. Like, you have to take the leash off at some point. And here's where the compliment sandwich comes in. Here's the second part of it. When they did, he was effective. He only had 3 throws of 20-plus air yards in this game. He hit 2 of them. 2 of them were big-time throws. He got a touchdown. There was a far hash go ball he hit, I think, to Mims. I think Mims is 19. I just saw jersey number. It was all 22. I think he hit it to Mims early on in the game. I was like, oh, my God, that's a beautiful ball. The scramble drill, I was like, oh, my God, that's cinema. Like, he can do it. Like, let him do it. He's got an arm. I don't understand why they won't let him push the ball down the field more, because statistically speaking, he's been effective at it. So I want them to do away with the screen heavy, RPO heavy bullshit, because like, I'm sorry, like 5.7 average depth of target, you might as well just run the ball at that point. Like, push it down the field. You have a young quarterback. He's talented. He's experienced. Just play football. Like, that's all I'm asking here.
Yeah, I'm all right with it for this particular week. And to your point, they almost won the game with it on the road. He needed it this week because he did not play well last week. He played well for like 3 plays last week, and then he became truly erratic. Felt like sometimes you need to settle your quarterback down in the second half. This was settling your quarterback down in the second game, and they almost got away with it. He does have that ability. I'm with you. If they're going to go as far as they want to go as a team, which is very, very far, they are going to have to open up that valve and let him push the ball down the field. They do have the receiving targets to pay it off as well. So I think we'll see more of it. I'm okay with it for this week. If it continues for another month, I'm not okay with it.
Now, getting to another quarterback from last year's draft class, let's talk about the Miami-New England game. Not that nobody's talking about either of these two teams, but it's been a while since I think we've hit on the Patriots, so I thought this was a good opportunity to do it, especially because I think Drake May just played his best game as a pro and his most complete game as a pro. He was excellent on third down. He was accurate. He showed off a little bit with his legs, moving the chains a couple times. He was great pre-snap. I thought the game plan was awesome. Again, it's Miami. It's not that hard to get yards on them, but still, like, I thought this was a tremendous game for Drake May. He got his running backs involved in the receiving game more, which is what I hoped for from last week. He did it this week. Defense, work in progress, but also at the same time, I acknowledge they didn't have Gonzo, and they just look entirely different when they got Christian Gonzalez. So hopefully he's back soon. But offensively, this was a great day for New England. And if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm juiced. Like, that's what I've been waiting to see.
All right, I got a surprise for you. I'm gonna throw you off. I'm gonna put on my Brett hat.
Okay.
All right, we're going to dive deep in some numbers because I agree with you. Josh McDaniels is evolving for Drake May, and he's doing it quickly. So this week's game plan reflected several significant shifts from the previous week. Shotgun rate dropped from 77.9 to 41.8. Motion rate increased from 17.6 to 69.2. Spread formation rate halved from 29.4 down to 15.4%. Results of all of that: completion percentage went from 65.2 to 82.6. He was up 1 touchdown, down 1 interception. Adjusted net yards per attempt went from 5.06 up to 9.65. That's 40% increase. Rating went from 80.6 to 137.3. All that to say, Josh McDaniels looked at week 1 and went, I think we need to do some different things. Probably sat down with Drake and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. What do you think about that? Yes, it's playing against a Miami defense that's not doing really well right now, and that's an understatement. But look for these elements to be the basis going forward, because it's kind of like, hey, hold on, I'm going to try something here. And then you try it and it works like this. You're like, yeah, guess what we're doing next week? Until further notice, you're going to see less shotgun, more motion, spread rate come down, more condensed formations. And Drake May basically said, yes, please, and twice on Sunday.
God, I'm trying not to be a dick about this, EJ. Things need to change with the Dolphins. And they need to change immediately. Like, I am already at that point. And there was a sequence late in the fourth quarter. I think inexcusable is not even a strong enough word for it. Right? So the situation is, you're on the Patriots 44. You're down by 6. Patriots 44-yard line, minute 15 to go. You pick up a big gain from Devon Achane. Initially, it looks like it's a touchdown. They somehow were not prepared to run a play and then false started. So it's 1st and 15. Full play clock. They get 40 seconds. Remember, they somehow burn all 40 seconds of that play clock without running a play after messing it up the first time, after a commercial break. Delay a game. 1st and 20 from the Patriots 36 now. So you got a mile to go. The Patriots are basically just protecting the end zone because they can give up a field goal. They can't give up a touchdown. So you get a quarters presentation, right? Pre-snap. And it's like a loose quarters presentation. The Dolphins are in empty. And again, they're snapping the ball with like 3 seconds to go on the play clock because somehow the operation is that much of a shit show that they can't get a play in, off 2 penalties in a row. Fine, whatever. So it's empty. Patriots are playing like a loose quarters look. And somehow, because everything is taking so long with the operation, Tua is like looking, it's like 3-by-2, so you got 3 to the field, 2 to the boundary. Tua's like looking to the field like he's looking off a safety. But it's quarters. Like, what is there to look off? Like, if you're going to look off a safety, it's going to be like cover 3, right? Where you have a safety roaming the middle. He's playing the quarterback's eyes. Like, you, as a safety, you're playing the quarterback in cover 3. In quarters, you're playing the threat. Like, you're matching patterns. You're not really looking at the quarterback and seeing where he's looking, which Tua should know that. He's been in the league long enough. So it's like, why are you looking off a safety that doesn't give a fuck where you're looking? Because he has his rules he has to play. And quarters against empty, there's like 2 ways to play it. If number 2 is out early, which Achane went to the flat, so number 2 is out early, so the boundary side safety has one of 2 things he can be doing, right? Either he's bracketing Waddle, who's running a vertical down the boundary, or his eyes are going to the crossing route that's coming across the middle, and he's going to be poaching that. So Tua's job is not to look off the safety, who doesn't give a shit where Tua's looking. Tua's job is to look at the safety and see what his rules are dictating him to do, see what threat he is matching. If he actually just glanced at the boundary side safety, he would have seen that he would have let 2 go to the flat, and he would have bracketed Waddle, Instead, Tua didn't even look. He was looking it off, and then he was taking a shot, which he overthrew by 5 yards. Didn't see the safety was bracketing Waddle, and consequently didn't see that the over route had a leverage advantage and was wide ass open over the middle of the field. They could have gotten everything back after all that in one play if Tua just, played quarterback, right? And looked at the pre-snap look and determined I can actually just read this out like a normal passing play. I saw that and was immediately like, oh, they're going to lose. They're going to lose. If they can't hit an over route against quarters, played that loose, they're going to lose. And then the next play, they took a 7-yard gain or something like that. And then they gave up, 2 pressures in a row. The first one, he just scrambled immediately. And then they gave up the sack to Milton on 4th down. It was a disaster. And yes, they got a bunch of explosives throughout the game. Again, the Patriots defense with and without Gonzo were 2 very different things. But if you want to get anywhere in the NFL, you have to be situationally aware. You have to be buttoned up. You have to be able to get in a single play call off a commercial break. That would be nice. And you have to have a quarterback who understands how to beat quarters coverage. If you don't have any of those things, you're dead. So to me, the Dolphins are dead. I don't think there's a way out of this other than replacing everything. Truly, GM, coach, quarterback, everything. This is over. It's flat out over. If they weren't going to win this game, I don't know what else they can do to get wins. It's done.
Yeah, Sunday night I was texting with a guy that used to work in the league. We were talking about a bunch of the games throughout the day, and Miami came up, and he responded to a text about the woes in Miami saying, Mike looks like he's out of answers. This league chews people up. NFL equals not for long. And sometimes you get to the point where it's figured out and you don't reinvent yourself. The best ones do. And I think Mike has that ability, but he's probably going to do it somewhere else as an offensive coordinator. Maybe he's going to take a year off. Maybe he's going to sit out. Maybe he's going to go back to college. I don't know. And he's going to get inspired again, but he needs to be, because right now the product on the field isn't good enough. And Miami's early season hole, we talk about the Bengals having slow starts. Miami's early season hole is getting really deep. And with the game against the Bills on Thursday, 0-3 is a real possibility. As a reminder, only 2.5% of teams make the playoffs after starting 0-3. That's 4 out of 158 since 1990. So if they lose to the Bills, which is a very real and strong possibility at this point, no matter how you're looking at that game, yeah, their season is effectively over, and that means a house cleaning in Miami.
I look at how Tua operated, not just in this game, but in the last game, pre-snap and post-snap, and I compare it to Drake May, who's a lot younger and a lot less experienced than him. And, again, keep that sequence I just described in your mind. There was a play that Drake made as a great, contrast to that, right? And you guys can go look it up. Third quarter, 149, 3rd and 3. Again, the Patriots are really good on 3rd down, and half that is because Drake was great pre-snap and post-snap. They used a little return motion to signal the coverage. 3rd and 3 is typically a man coverage down for a lot of teams, including Miami. They confirmed it's man. Changed the play at the line. You saw everybody else. The communication was great. Everybody acknowledged the call. Jalen Phillips came screaming off the edge, stepped up away from it, 2 hands on the ball, protected the ball, was in a tight pocket, delivered a beautiful, beautiful shot down the boundary on a freeze go to Ramondre out of the backfield and got an explosive. And I just look at that pre-snap and post-snap operation from a second-year quarterback, starting his 18th, 19th game, something like that. And I compare that to what we saw from Tua, who's supposed to be the grizzled veteran at this point, and they just look like they're on completely opposite trajectories. So I'm in on New England still. I am out on Miami. I mean, I've been out since last week, but I have never been more out at this point. It's awful there. It's really awful. And I feel for the fans. I feel for the people in the building that know what's coming, because they're not stupid. They know what's about to happen. And that sucks, but it's also necessary because I don't think this gets better without it getting worse first. And is not going to stop getting worse anytime soon.
Sure doesn't look like it at this point, and that is not something that we revel in here on this podcast. It's going to affect a lot of people, a lot of lives, a lot of families. That's not something that we're cheering for. But as football fans, we are also not going to look at the product that the Dolphins are putting on the field right now and say, oh, yeah, it's good enough, because it's clearly not. And unfortunately, that bus you're riding right now, you're going to run out of seats after Thursday. If they get blown out by the Bills, like that is the flare going up. It's Jover at that point, and space is going to be standing room only on the get out of town bus.
All right, last game of the week, and probably the best game of the week. Dallas, New York, in a shootout for the ages. When's the last time we had a shootout between the New York Giants and literally anyone, let alone the Dallas Cowboys? Man, this was the best game Russ has played in a really long time. This was a continuation of the excellent game I thought Dak played in week 1. Dak is coming off a major injury. You couldn't tell. Like, he has been awesome, like truly awesome to start this season. The run game has been up and down, but like we're seeing spurts from Javonte. Like, he looks spry. Also, again, has dealt with injuries in his career. Like, he looks great. Offensive line's been banged up. They just lost Cooper Beebe as well, but like I thought they played as well as they could considering their injury situation. CD stopped dropping the ball. That was nice. They got Pickens involved. They got Turpin involved. They got Ferguson involved. Like this offense is legit. It's awesome. I just wish they had a defense to match, because on one hand, yes, Russ played the best game he's played in years. On the other hand, Dallas allowed Russ to play the best game he's played in years, which is an entirely different issue at hand.
Yeah, we talked about the Cowboys in the summer preview series as the top line talent is real good and can play with anybody on any given day. If they start suffering injuries, that's not going to be the case. But for right now, in week 2, they're all there and firing on all cylinders. The funny thing is this was 2 games in 1, not just because it went to overtime, but this was a defensive struggle through 3 quarters. It was 16-17 at the end of the 3rd quarter, and then the sea parted and 41 points got hung up. That is the largest scoring 4th quarter ever between the Giants and the Cowboys, and they have played each other a lot. The drive chart for the 4th quarter reads field goal, touchdown, 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 field goal. Like,
Jesus,
speaking of no defense being played. Yeah, defense optional, Big 12. Some cool random facts about this one. Russ had his 2nd highest total passing yards of his career, which is bonkers to think about with everything he's done. 450 yards, his highest. Sorry, close your ears. 452 versus the Texans in 2017. The funny thing was I put out a tweet that said, hey, this is his largest passing game of his career, because one of those funny things, one of those intricacies of the NFL is stats get adjusted. And during the game, he was credited with 453 at one point, and when they went back and readjusted the stats, as they sometimes do, it becomes the 2nd best. Not that that's a big deal, but it is kind of interesting. Sunday was Russ's 200th game in the NFL. So 2nd best game out of 200. And Aubrey becomes the first kicker ever to hit a game-tying field goal with no time left on the clock, and then the winner in overtime with no time left on the clock in the same game. So Brandon Aubrey is a whole separate issue, and I'll let you speak to that because I know you put out a tweet about it today. But this game was like kind of hard to watch for the first three quarters, and then if you had it on as I did, you kept sort of Greg Olsen was calling it, you kind of kept going back to it, and you're like, what is going on? Didn't they scored again? All right, Hank, hold on. We're going to put this one up on the big screen. I'm going to track this. And then it just usually things kind of cool down at that point. Nope, just kept going. This was like throwing a match into a fireworks locker.
It was the game that all of America was watching while they were waiting for the Chiefs-Eagles game to start. And then the 4th quarter happened, and everybody's like, oh my God, they're actually throwing the ball. Maybe we don't want to watch Chiefs-Eagles because they're actually throwing the ball. It was fun, man. Like the last, I guess it was like 45 minutes of real time of that game was a fever dream. but I loved it. It produced one of the wildest stat lines I've seen for a quarterback, which is a 13.6 average depth of target with an 84.6% adjusted completion percentage, bombing it down the field and completing almost all of them. Like, that's absurd. Like, Russ was playing out of his mind in this game. He did have, of course, the just really bad pick late, but to me, that didn't take away from the fact that he put so many points on the board. Like, they should have won. He did his job. Like, they shouldn't have even been in position for Russ to throw that pick in the first place. So I still think that he played phenomenal. Maybe Jackson Dart being in the game plan kind of spurned him to just cut it loose and just bomb it down the field and go down with the ships if he needed to. I just want him to keep doing that every week. Like, if you just treat every single week like Jackson Dart is about to take your job and you're going to play like that, like, the Giants have a shot here. Hell, even though they're 0-2, like, they got a shot to beat the Chiefs if they play like that again. So overall, if I'm a Giants fan, even though, the team's 0-2 and they just lost in brutal fashion because they're the only team that has game-winning 60-yarders consistently hit against them. Overall, like, I'm feeling positive about that game because protection was better. Malik Neighbors is a star. Cam Scadabo's looking good. There's a lot of positives to take away from that. And you just have to trust that your very talented, very experienced defense is going to improve, which they better. But yeah, man, if I'm a Giants fan, I'm feeling okay, honestly.
Yeah, you know who else wants it to continue week to week? Malik Neighbors. 9 of 13. He caught 9 of 13 targets for 167 and 2 TDs. If they don't have Malik Neighbors, they're not in this game. As well as Russ played, Malik paid so many of those throws off. And Wan'Dale Robinson, who is a well-chronicled Brian Dable favorite, had a very good game in Malik's shadow as well. 8 for 142 plus a touchdown. You talked about Cam Scadabow. Took him, all of 2 games to go, yeah, that's our dude. Because we talked about it this summer. He just fits the style that they want to play, and you consistently are going to see that effort. But while we're talking about rejuvenation storylines and Russ, I want to talk about Javonte Williams because you talked about him at the top. He averaged 5.4 yards per carry in this one. Over the first 2 games, 16.5 carries per game at 4.6 yards per attempt. If you push that out over a healthy 17-game season, that would amount to 1,283 yards. Interestingly enough, Williams has never hit 1,000 in his career. Closest he got was 900 in that good rookie year. Obviously dealing with an injury last year. Really good to see him come out and be a significant part of this attack, not just somebody that they're trying to get volume to set up play action or something else. He is pounding the ball like he did before. I would love to see him stay healthy. I'm sure Cowboys fans would as well at this point. But yeah, the Giants are a lot more fun when they do this. And it's strange because we thought the offense would be improved, but the defense would really lead the charge. And sure enough, kind of the opposite thing happened, which is why football is fun.
One last note on this game. Like you mentioned, we have to appreciate Brandon Aubrey because that man is a weapon. The fact that it was 25 seconds left in the game and the Cowboys knew all they had to do was get to midfield,
yeah,
which they did because the Giants played the softest defense I've ever seen, which if you're going against a kicker that hits 60-yarders, maybe don't do that. But they just let Ferguson run up the seam. They hit one 18-yard pass, got him to midfield, and they didn't even try to throw it again. They had timeouts.
Nope.
They didn't even try to throw it again. It's like, let's just run to the hash he wants it to be on, because if we're inside of 70, like, we think we can go to overtime. And he just drilled a 64-yarder like it was nothing. And there's a stat that I looked up while preparing for this show that since 2023, which is when he entered the NFL, Brandon Aubrey is 71.4% as far as 60-plus yard field goal make percentage, and everyone else combined is 33.3%. So the Cowboys have an advantage that nobody else has other than maybe Jacksonville if they would let their kicker actually try it from that deep. And maybe Cameron Dicker for the Chargers, but they're the only team that's like actively willing to let their kicker just drill bombs from 60-plus regularly. And that gives them an advantage, in games like this one that other teams wouldn't be able to do.
Cowboys were so nonchalant. It was scary. If I was the Giants, I would have been chilled. There was no rush. There was no hurry. Like you said, typically you would see a team try and throw it again to make it a little bit easier. They were like, nah, man, we're good. And just basically handed him the ball. It was like everyone in the building was like, 100% this is going in, which when you think about it is just off the charts wild.
And they were right, by the way.
Yeah.
They were right.
There's a reason, confidence born in demonstrated ability. That is Brandon Aubrey right now.
I want to thank all of our Patreon executive producers who helped make this show what it is. Fitzy, Connor, Liam, Mike, Jack, Major, Owen, Patrick, and of course, Spencer. We thank all of you for your contributions. And apologies for the show being one day late this week. Power outages are a bitch, but we'll be back again shortly to preview week 3, and we will see you then.